My name is Adam Lee. I lost my virginity when I was 4 on the back of a big wheel, and she was 8, so twice my age, older girl. My first time on stage was when I was 3, and I followed my dad up on stage and carried a diaper and handed it to him. And that's when he started writing material for me and exploiting me. But I started on my own when I was 16. My high school girlfriend's ex-boyfriend started to do stand-up, and I didn't like that guy, so I wanted to show him who the real funny one was. So I entered the Las Vegas comedy competition, went over to Seattle and won, and then I went to Vegas and won the teen division of the Las Vegas International, and that's when I got started. I am a 5th generation entertainer. My dad's a stand-up comedian. He has been for over 50 years. My grandparents were vaudeville dancers, and so they would tour all through, working the same theaters that I work sometimes now, out in the Midwest or the South. And my great-grandfather was a magician, and my great-great-grandfather was a snake oil salesman, I think, which I'm counting as entertainment, is then I get to say 5 times. I would say my favorite places to perform are probably small towns.
Fellas, I'm having a weird week. My grandpa died. But he died in the best way you can die. You know, the electric chair. Could have been worse. Could have died like my grandma, getting strangled by her husband.
You know, I think some of the best shows I've ever had have been like little mountain towns where there was 1,200 people that lived there, because everybody that lived in the town came out to the show, because they don't get a lot of entertainment. It's tough to say whether I prefer small clubs or large clubs. I've worked in a lot of theaters, and theaters are a lot of fun. There's nothing like making like 3,000 people lose their minds. I'd like to do more acting too, which I've been doing a lot more of. So that's the kind of performing that, you know, I'm looking to do right now. Some of the biggest places I performed were the Stardust Casino and the Wayne Newton Theater before they tore that down. Just going to cities where there's old vaudeville theaters that, you know, people used to work and tap dance and sing and make people laugh in, you know, like 150 years ago. One of the greatest feelings you can get as an entertainer would be to capture the audience's attention, like get everybody in the crowd focused on you and build up that energy. Because that's the thing about doing stand-up is it's like that energy gains momentum, and scientifically you're prone to laugh if everybody around you is laughing at something, even if you don't get the joke. And so that energy makes people feel good, and it gets bigger from there, and it's a high is what it is. I mean, the adrenaline of getting up and performing in front of a bunch of people, and then the other side of that adrenaline, just such a rewarding experience. It's sort of, you know, sometimes you feel like a daredevil when you're performing.
I've been growing this for 14 years. If I had a beard like that, I'd jump out of a helicopter and punch a moose in the face.
You get good at talking with one voice and thinking about the material that you're about to do with another voice, and a third, like part of your brain, analyzing the crowd.
My grandpa had weird stories. He did. He told me one time he was afraid of jellyfish, and I asked him, is that because you're afraid of getting stung? He said, no, it's because I'm afraid of finding out I'll like getting beat on.
People come up to me all the time and say, I want to start doing stand-up, or that's something I've always wanted to do, and I encourage them to go to an open mic. It's a lot of work. It's like going out to become good at stand-up is pretty much like going to college for a graduate degree, because it takes years to get to a point where not only is your act really, really strong and tight, your ability to network and get out there and sell yourself in order to make money, that takes a lot of work to get up to that. But it's a hard life. I think anyone who has a dream should follow it, you know what I mean? So I usually know it's time to get off the stage when just my clothes are too wet, they're sticking to my body. Openers, people who are hosting the shows, those guys are normally doing like 15 minutes. for the entire show, but they're going up a couple of different times, so they might open with 10. A middle act, a feature, will go on for 30 minutes, and a headliner will go on for 45 to an hour, and that's pretty much been standard on the road for forever.
Thank you, one guy over there, for understanding that shit. My name's Adam Lee. I want to thank you guys very much for coming out to the show tonight. Please, a round of applause for the rest of the comics you've seen up here. Keep it going for me, come on, ladies and gentlemen.
So many great late night talk show hosts that, I mean, it's difficult to pick which one's your favorite, because Carson is the classic one, you know. He's timeless, he's hilarious, but Letterman was could be risque, and I really like the stuff that Conan puts out on the internet, some of the interviews that he has. And Jon Stewart has always been my favorite. I like to consider myself an insult comic.
What's with the fucking peanut gallery over here? You, mustachio.
I grew up on the Dean Martin roast, not because they were on TV when I was watching TV, but because my dad had a box set. So we'd always sit down and watch, like, all of them. Really old, black and white classic ones. And I don't know if I could say I had a favorite comedian that's on there, you know? I went and saw Don Rickles in person, and he's the same guy, like, same act. And he had to have been, he was like 143 years old, and he was doing the same, still had that fire, and he's great. I love Bob Newhart, too, who was Don Rickles' best friend. I wish I could sing and dance, because back then, that's when people really knew their shit, or getting out there and doing stuff. Yellow M&Ms and my green M&Ms. I was supposed to have only green M&Ms.